All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 11 of the That's an Awful Take podcast. I'm your host, your hostess with the mostest, Price Manser, here to make the most out of your day. Hope everyone is having a wonderful Thursday as always. Hope everyone has had a great week. Me personally, I've had a fantastic week because I haven't had to go to class this week because of snow. First time seeing snow, so that was pretty amazing. It was insane. What a week. They got to go sledding and all that great stuff. I mean, just really peak snow stuff, right? So, hope everyone's doing well. We got a lot of great stuff to get into, as you can see from the title of the stream. We're going to be getting into a little recap of the NFL playoff games. So, Texans, Chiefs, Lions, Commanders, Eagles, Rams, Bills, Ravens, of course. And then we're going to get into the conference championship matchups. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the Natty National Championship. What a game that was. Really a great watch. And then I did a little transfer portal rankings. So like just based on teams and stuff. So, that'll be great. And then as always, at the end of the show, we got our real spiel, just sitting there chatting. You guys feel free to ask me questions about whatever, and I'll greatly appreciate that. I'll answer them. It'll be great. Great segment, really. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Jesus, light is so bright. Anyways, so as you can see, this is the playoff bracket from last week. As you can see, we got Chiefs, Texans, Bills, Ravens, Lions, Commanders, Eagles, Rams. All of these games really were fantastic. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I had like a single like bad watch really, because they're just all so good. Like Chiefs, Texans was great, close game. Bills, Ravens was amazing. Commanders, Lions was, I think, the surprise game. Everyone was like didn't expect to happen, and then it happened, right? And then Eagles, Rams was also really good. A game I didn't really think that was going to be that good. It ended up being great. So, no complaints there. And so let's get right into it. So Chiefs, Texans, right? So as I expected, I talked about it last week. I said this game was going to be a close game, and it was. I mean, really, 23-14. Chiefs didn't really get an edge right until the end. So, awful take, right? So Texans offense really played great. It's an offense that's really been hit with the injury bug between Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, and the O line hasn't been great. Mixon's been spotty with injuries. Always kind of listed as questionable, and they've been filling in guys. Dare Abungo. I'm not gonna try and say that. Anyways, and Damian Pierce have been filling in for when Mixon's gone, but the Texans offense really did not play bad at all. I mean, you see here C.J. Stroud 19 of 28, 245 yards, and Joe Mixon 18 carries for 88 yards and touchdown. Nico Collins had a great game, 5 receptions for 81 yards, and health is definitely a factor, I think, especially in this game, and for the Texans whole season really. The Texans are 10-7, but they're 10-7 the hard way, really. I mean, a lot of guys got hurt. A lot of guys, a lot of their big playmakers weren't there, and a team like a Texans offense at full strength with C.J. Stroud, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon at full strength, I think is a great team, right? And I think the reason why they lost this game was because of like they're not at full strength. I mean, the fact they even made it this far with this kind of lackluster offense is really impressive. But in my opinion, there are kind of two pretty pivotal calls in this game, and I think that they deserve to be talked about. I mean, I think everyone's been talking about them. J.J. Watt was coming out yesterday talking about it, but it was the unnecessary roughness call on Will Anderson. Unnecessary roughness call. I forget on who it was on, two players, but and the roughing the passer on Will Anderson. I mean, pretty costly. The roughing the passer was on like 3rd and 23 or something. Of course, roughing passer is an automatic first down. So it's pretty rough, And then they had the late slide on Mahomes for the unnecessary roughness, where they didn't even hit Mahomes. The two players hit each other over the top of Mahomes, and of course they threw the flag, called it unnecessary roughness, which is really an awful call. I mean, we've seen it throughout this whole season with the Chiefs. So the Chiefs get these crazy calls and they end up winning the football game. I mean, it happened to my Falcons pretty rough. I think we would have won that game if they would have called that PI on Kyle Pitts. But really, I mean, those are two pretty costly games, or two pretty costly calls. And, I will say, I don't really think that calls usually determine the outcome of a game. Like, obviously, there are some instances, especially with the Chiefs, where the calls are really pivotal. But I think even despite these calls, the Texans still had a chance to win the game. And I think a lot of what it is to blame for the Texans is the Texans' pass defense, or just defense as a whole. You leave Kelsey open way too much. 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown, which is the best season or the best game Kelsey's had all season. And then you're not able to force any turnovers, which Patrick Mahomes this season has he hasn't been his greatest, right? I think he has 12 interceptions, right? So, really just an all-around pretty rough game defensively for the Texans. They were able to get stops here and there, but when that mattered most, couldn't force a turnover. You can't, keep Travis Kelsey in check. So that's why, in my opinion, they lost this football game, right? So the next game we are going over is, sellout kicker for Houston. That is very true. That's an important aspect I didn't really talk about here. So Kyami Fairbairn just looked rough against Kansas City. I think he missed 2 extra point and 2 field goals, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot you can do better as a Texans there. Next, we're going to talk about the Commanders and the Lions. So, really, this game was unexpected, in my opinion, and I love it. I love it. Unexpected, instant classic, 45-31. I mean, what a game, right? Commanders came into this game and just looking to attack, and they did it. They attacked, and they beat, in my opinion, the best team in the NFC, right? I mean, Detroit was absolutely electric, 15-2 in the regular season, played great. The Commanders were also very good in the regular season, but this team was just a team that went 4-13. You have a very young playmaker leader in Jaden Daniels. And honestly, a supporting cast that isn't elite. You have your elite supporting cast, you think the Eagles or the Lions or the Ravens, teams that have a really good supporting cast. But you look at the Commanders, it's Brian Robinson. Terry McLaurin is obviously a great piece to have on your team. But other teams, you have even for the Lions, you got Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Samuel Porter. You have all these guys, and this Commanders team, despite the not being as skilled talent-wise, in my opinion, they still came out. Dan Quinn had a great game plan. Cliff Kingsbury had an amazing game plan as well, and they shut down the Detroit Lions. So what happened, right? So the Lions just could not stop the Commanders' offense. And obviously the Lions have had a lot of injuries throughout the season in their secondary, on the D-line. And, we could talk about the health game like we did last time, but, the Lions just could not stop the Commanders' offense. Jaden Daniels looked great, 300 yards pretty much, 2 touchdowns, and then he had another 50 on the ground. Brian Robinson and Eckler looked really good, right? Brian Robinson probably having, once again, the best game of his season. I keep saying it. Brian Robinson, 15 carries, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns. Eckler, I think, had about 50, 60 yards 40 yards on the ground, or 40 yards receiving, and another 40 on the ground, which is just what you want from a guy like Eckler this late into his career. Not even late into his career, but, he's a guy who's kind of been written off, right? But still looked great. De'Ami Brown and Terry McLaurin did great. Both had over 70 yards. You see De'Ami Brown here, 6 receptions, 98 yards. Terry McLaurin had 70 and a touchdown, right? So really, I mean, the Lions could not stop the Commanders' offense, and a lot of it was on big plays, big plays deep to De'Ami Brown. Terry McLaurin with that screen took to the house, and it was kind of the big plays that were killing Detroit, right? And Detroit was able to hang with them in the second quarter, right? I mean, it was only, I guess it was 31-21, but in the third quarter at least, it was 31 to 28, right? So it really it became a close game, and I think the main reason why the Lions lost is just a turnover battle, right? We were talking about it in the last game. Texans weren't able to force turnovers; they lost the game. The Commanders were able to force turnovers, and they won the game, right? 5 turnovers, which from the Lions is actually like ridiculous, right? And it really sucks if you're the Lions, right? You do so good during the regular season, and you do like you're 15-2, and you Jared Goff has had one bad game where he threw like 5 picks, but you still won it, right? But a guy like Jared Goff is always due to like for 2 or 3 bad games a season. So it just sucks that Jared Goff, the next bad game he's due for was this one, right? 4 turnovers from Jared Goff, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble, and even Jamison Williams had an interception, which is quite funny. I don't know why you give the ball to Jamison Williams in that situation. Overall, pretty rough play call, and that's just kind of, I think that's what you get with Dan Campbell, right? Dan Campbell is the most gutsy play caller in all of football right now, and a lot of the times it does work. I mean, we've seen the fake punts from like the 20-yard line, fake field goals, the dump outs to Dan Skipper, Penei Sewell, having Penei Sewell throw the ball, and then you come out with this call, the wide receiver pass, the double pass, and it just doesn't work out. So, I mean, I think that's kind of just what you get with Dan Campbell, but you gotta, tell the wide receiver to throw it out of bounds or something, right? You can't. That's such a costly turnover. But yeah, the turnover battle is what really did the Lions in. And if you look at it, the Lions really didn't play a bad game. Obviously, Jared Goff looked pretty rough, but he still had 300 yards, a touchdown, and then even Monty's throwing passes. What are we doing, right? But Jahmyr Gibbs looked great, 14 carries, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Monty looked so-so, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, 137 yards. Gibbs adds another 70 on the ground. Laporta has a very solid game at the tight end position. So, it's just a turnover game really just sold the Detroit Lions away from this game. And now we have a situation where the Commanders are in the conference championship, and they're just 4-13, which is an awesome story. I love it. NFL scriptwriters did a fantastic job, right? So that's Commanders Lions. Next, we're going to talk about Eagles Rams. And this was another kind of surprising game for me. I didn't really, think it was going to be that close, but it ended up playing down to the wire pretty much. So Saquon went off, right? I mean, we saw it the last time the Rams and Eagles played during the regular season. Saquon had over 200 yards. You look here, Saquon Barkley, 26 carries, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and I think he had another 50 through the air, right? And, it's just an elite game. Saquon's been the best running back pretty much since week 8, maybe even before that. It's kind of a mix if you want to, put Derrick Henry in there and whatnot. But, Saquon Barkley just having an elite season, probably going to win Offensive Player of the Year. And he's proven it, right? 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, just looked elite. I love it. And, the Eagles have done a great job of playing turnover-free football. You look here, 0 turnovers, right? 350 yards, 0 turnovers, 16 first downs, like really efficient football. And you could tell, Jalen Hurts, he's not forced to throw it deep. He's not forced to throw it like across the field, all over the field. Like, yeah, I'm sure they throw it deep on those options like a couple times a game. Every team does that, but really it's efficient football. I mean, you're dumping it out to the tight end, you're dumping it down in the running back to the running back in the flat, like Kenneth Gainwell, Saquon Barkley, Grant Calcaterra, Dallas Goedert. All these guys are getting involved, and you're not really hitting the deep ball to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, and they have before in the past, right? But recently, I mean, just straight turnover-free football, playing safe, which it was also snowing, so they're gonna have to play that way, right? So just all around efficient game by the Eagles. And for the Rams, I mean, it's really unfortunate. In my opinion, they just didn't get the offense going fast enough. Stafford looked great, 26-44, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns. But there's just some costly turnovers, once again, right? We're talking about this turnover battle once again. We've talked about it for all 2 other games, right? So, two costly fumbles from Stafford and Kyron Williams, which really came at really important parts of the game. They score, the other team scores off those turnovers, and you know, lack for a better term, it's barbecue chicken from there, right? And there were big plays by Stafford and the Rams, right? Kyron Williams broke out on some good runs. Nakua looked good, even though he was battling injuries a little bit. And Demarcus Robinson looked great. I mean, what a guy, right? You're one big body in the receiving room, the one-on-one guy, 3 receptions, 74 yards, right? 24 yards per reception. And, you know, they really did the thing the Rams are good at, which is passing the ball to everyone, spreading the ball evenly, right? You got Puka, Cooper, Tyler Higbee, Demarcus Robinson. They did a good job of that. But it was the turnovers once again. The snow didn't really help them at all. And, offense would be stagnant at times. I mean, you see they'd have the big play, but after the big play, they just wouldn't get it going quite enough. But that's what happens, Lose a turnover game, you lose the ball game traditionally, right? So that's kind of just what happened here. That's a lot of the takeaways for all of these games, and we're going to see it again here in the Bills Ravens game. Is if you lose the turnover battle, you lose the game. Hi, Damar Hamlin. Anyways, yeah, another snow game, right? To finish out the playoff slate, and it was a great game. I mean, I was kind of harping on this matchup last week. I was saying this is going to be the one. It wasn't really the one. Of course, the Commanders and the Commanders and the Lions was a great matchup and completely unexpected in my opinion. But this game, I think, was supposed to be the real marquee matchup, right? Of course, it was the last one in the slate, and it was a great game. I loved watching it. You had your defense, you had your offense, you had all of it. I mean, it's Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, the two MVP candidates, right? And just duking it out in the snow. I mean, this game was another case of forcing turnovers, like I said, for the past three. You see here, Baltimore 3 turnovers, Buffalo 0. And a lot of the times you see it's these teams who are kind of used to playing in these rougher conditions that are winning the turnover battle, right? The Bills, 0 turnovers in the snow. The Eagles, 0 turnovers in the snow. A team like LA, who doesn't play in the snow, has 2 turnovers. A team like Baltimore, who doesn't traditionally play in the snow, has 3 turnovers, right? What the heck is that? Anyways, sorry. Um, Buffalo is able to force 3 turnovers, which was not even that great of a defense, right? And then, you know, Buffalo, even if you look at it on offense, if you look at the box score and you look at these statistics, you're like, what the heck? How did Buffalo win this game? Josh Allen, 16 of 22, 127 yards, 20 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. And then James Cook, 17 carries for 67 yards. Not a crazy efficient game. No one over 100 receiving yards. You're like, what the heck? So, I think what it was is Buffalo capitalizing off those turnovers, right? You get those turnovers in good field position and you score. I mean, that's what happened. Josh Allen was looking great, running the football on the goal line especially. And, Buffalo was just being really efficient on offense. They were scoring the ball. They didn't have to put up any spectacular plays or anything or any spectacular stats, but they still managed to win this ball game. And, Lamar and Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, Likely, Bateman, they're all doing great things, right? 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, but Lamar had a fumble and an interception. There's 2 turnovers, very costly. Mark Andrews had the fumble, and then he had the drop 2 point conversion, which was, probably the most pivotal play of this football game. Mark Andrews is wide open in the end zone. He catches it, but he drops it. So, what would have happened if he would have caught that ball? Who knows? But the drop 2 point, really unfortunate for the Ravens. Lost them this football game. And, Mark Andrews is probably getting toasted all week, but really just unfortunate. And I think it's even more especially unfortunate is when you have Derrick Henry running 16 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Likely has 4 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. Bateman even has a good game. You're without Zay Flowers. These guys are stepping up, but you're just turnovers away from winning the football game, right? So that's kind of my 2 cents about the bracket so far, the little recap. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick, and we'll keep going. All right, so next, of course, we're going to talk about Eagles, Commanders, Bills, Chiefs. Two great games. I mean, the playoffs have been great so far this season. So let's keep going. So, Commanders, Eagles. I mean, I think this game is going to either be like very similar game to the last game between the Commanders and the Lions, or it's going to be like an Eagles are just going to dominate. Obviously, this is going to be played at Lincoln Financial in Philadelphia, which doesn't really help Buffalo or the Commanders in any way. The Eagles are very good at home, so that's going to be it's an uphill battle for the Commanders. But I was saying that last week against the Lions, and look what happened to me, right? So it's going to be a very similar game to last game where the Eagles are just going to dominate. I mean, Saquon's going to do his thing this game. I mean, he's been doing it every game. We saw it last week. Gibbs and Monty. Monty didn't look that great, but Gibbs still had 100-something yards and then 70 receiving yards. Saquon is one of those, kind of similarly to how I was talking about Arizona State in the CFP. Cam Scatterboo is going to do his thing. Saquon Barkley is going to do his thing. It kind of depends on the quarterback play, right? I said Sam Levitt needs to play lights out, and he played really good. Still lost the game. But Jalen Hurts needs to play lights out, right? Jalen Hurts hasn't lit up the stat sheet by any means recently this season. But, he's played very efficient football. Only 5 interceptions on the season. Very turnover-free, efficient. And, if he could keep that up this game, I do feel like the Commanders are still going to have a foot in the door, win this game. I believe that Hurts needs to have a great game for them to win this game, right? I think he needs to have a great game passing. You need to find A.J. Brown. You need to find Devontae Smith. You need to get the wideouts involved, especially on a Dan Quinn defense who's been playing really good in this playoffs, and then a Cliff Kingsbury offense who you can't count out. I mean, we've learned that the past 2 games, right? So I think the Eagles offense really needs to step it up. You can't just you can only rely on Saquon so much, right? So I think, A.J. Brown has feasted in the previous 2 matchups of these teams this season. And I think that will happen again, honestly. The corners for the Commanders are not great. But, who knows what will happen with the Commanders because I'm just wrong all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, I think that both of the wide receivers will step up. I think Jalen Hurts will step it up, and I think that the Eagles are going to go to the Super Bowl. I think they win this ball game. For the Commanders especially, it's like, how far can you go with this team, right? It's you'll have to see, but I don't think they'll get to the Super Bowl. I think they're much too young, and they have no experience in this position, except for Dan Campbell, obviously. Or not Dan Campbell, sorry, Dan Quinn. But Bobby Wagner, of course. But I just don't think the Eagles, or I don't think the Commanders, I think the lights are maybe too bright. I think you've gone one bridge too far, right? So give me the Eagles to win this one. I think Jalen Hurts will get it done. Next, we're going to talk about the Bills and the Chiefs, right? This could go down as the game of the year, in my opinion. I mean, this is the game I'm most looking forward to. Josh Allen, 4-0 against the Chiefs in the regular season, but I think only 1-2 in the playoffs. Both of these teams really have a lackluster supporting cast compared to what it's been in the past, right? And I think it depends a lot on these 2 QBs. I think, the Bills got the win in the regular season. Josh Allen looked great. And, in that game, the Bills were able to force turnovers. So if the Bills can do that again, if their defense can force turnovers, they force turnovers against Baltimore, they have a great chance of winning this game. But to me, what is very alarming is the Bills are only 5-4 on the road this season, right? And this game is going to be played at Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City. So, it's going to be tough. Josh Allen will probably have to play his best game with maybe not his best game this season, but one of his best, right? He's going to have to look electric. He's going to have to play really good football. And the Chiefs, 8-0 at home, just like the Bills are. And it's an uphill battle for sure. I don't think that you can never count the Chiefs out. I think we've learned that all this season. Chiefs are going to chief usually, and despite the 2 losses, it's just rough to pick against the Chiefs. But I'm doing it. I think the Bills can win this game. The Bills have been really the kryptonite of the Chiefs this whole season. Um, and Josh Allen has been playing great football. I think he has a significant chance to win the MVP. I think, especially after beating Lamar, he has an even greater chance at winning the MVP. I mean, you got in my opinion, who should be the MVP on your team. You have James Cook. Shakir's going to have to play great. The defense is going to have to step up. I think the defense can guard Kelsey very well, but I think, they were able to force 2 turnovers last time. Who's to say they can't do it again? Who's to say the Bills won't get to their first Super Bowl in so long? But give me the Bills. I like Josh Allen. I want Josh Allen in the bowl, baby. That's what I want. So give me Buffalo Bills. Give me Josh Allen. Give me that guy. Should be MVP. Let's ride. Give me the Bills, right? I think the Bills are going to win this game, but I think it's going to be spectacular. I love it. Give me the Bills, right? So yeah, I'm going to take a peek at chat real quick. Say hello to anyone. Me and Jay Bush tuned in. Hey, let's go, gang. What it do, everybody? Hope everyone's doing well. Casey going to get exposed. Heck yeah, what up, Grace? Yeah, it's going to be nasty. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great watch. All right, let's switch the gears, right? Let's go to college. Back to college, right? So, national championship. What a game, first off. I mean, obviously, there weren't any SEC teams or there weren't this and that, but I still think this was a great national championship. It was a great playoff for sure. And I think I'm very glad they've done it. I'm very glad with what they've been doing. And I think the committee did a good job with this one. A lot of people disagree, but I just think it's kind of like SEC, like diehards. But, I mean, what a game. I think this is a good national championship and a great reason why the 12-team playoff is a good thing. Both of these teams ranked outside of the top 4, and they did a great job. They went all the way and they got to the Natty, right? And both had a pretty rough road, maybe not Notre Dame, but Ohio State especially had such a hard path, and they still made it, right? And let's just talk about this game, right? Will Howard just lit it up. 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 for 21 passing, only 4 incompletions in this game. National championship, your team has to win. Senior year, you're going to the draft, 4 incompletions. I mean, just stellar performance from Will Howard. Jeremiah Smith looked great. 5 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Emeka Egbuka looked good. Quinshon Judkins had a great game. And, Notre Dame, they said they were going to play man like they have all season, and they did that. And because of that, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, they feasted, being quite honest. And Notre Dame also struggled against the run. I mean, we saw it against Penn State. I talked about it last week. I was like, I don't know who they're going to try and stop. There's no way they could stop Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith on the outside. Excuse me. They haven't stopped the run. They failed miserably to stop the run against Penn State. And they also didn't really stop the run that well against Indiana. And here we are, and Quinshon Judkins, 11 carries, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Travion Henderson had another 50, right? And, it's really like, what could have Notre Dame done here? I just, to be honest, I didn't think they had the firepower to even keep up with this team, especially with how hot this team has been playing all playoff. And, in my opinion, though, Riley Leonard did have probably the best game of his season. 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 17 carries for 40 yards. Got some key first downs, but man, Notre Dame just ran that guy into the ground, right? That first drive, he was throwing up and everything, and I was like, it's not sustainable. You can only rely on him for so much. And he really did play a great game, and probably his best game of the season. But, there wasn't a lot of help for Notre Dame, right? They have a massive hole at wide receiver. The running backs are good, but they got absolutely just stuffed, right? The Ohio State D-line did a great job against the run. Jeremiah Love only had 3 yards. Darion Price only had 13. I mean, you're holding 2 great backs to under 20 yards. And Ohio State just played lights out. And I think they kind of, deserve to win this Natty, especially after the run they went on, right? And it's just how it goes, right? We'll take a look at the box score. Leonard only averaging 2.4 yards a carry. Of course, sacks are taken into account of that. But Jadarian Price, 3 carries for 13 yards. Jeremiah Love, 4 carries for 3 yards. Like, Greathouse played great, and Mitchell Evans played great. But other than that, it was like the offense was pretty rough, right? You got to have some sort of dynamic ability on offense. You can't just have Riley Leonard throwing the ball when that's not even his best talent, right? So, I mean, that's just kind of what happens. And, what I don't get, and I'm not the biggest, like, Ohio State fan. I to be honest, I probably hate Ohio State, if we're being real. But, like, people are saying, like, Ohio State doesn't deserve this Natty, or it's weak. It's a weak national championship, weak Natty, and I don't get it. Like, they're getting hate for no reason, in my opinion. I mean, this is a team. Let's look at it, right? This is a team who has beaten every team in the top 8 of the CFP poll except for Georgia. They beat Oregon. They beat Texas. They beat Tennessee. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Indiana. They beat Penn State. 6 teams, right? 6 teams in the top 8 they beat by a margin of 15 points or better. So I don't get why they're forcing this hate or this agenda that this national championship is weak, because it wasn't. This is probably the hardest national championship in the past decade. If you think about it, no team. This is the first team to go and win 4 games in a row to make the national championship. So I think they deserved it, right? They played and beat great teams by great margins, right? They had their one low of this season, which was beating Michigan. But why are we bringing that up? Every team has had a low this season. Every team has had a frustrating loss. And it's a rivalry game. It's the rivalry game for Ohio State, right? Michigan, they've won the past 4 matchups. They're gearing up for this game. They know what it's like to play in this game, and they've won it. And they just wanted it more, right? But that's not to say, we should focus on that. Everyone has had a rough game this season. Alabama's had rough games. Ole Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas. I mean, so many teams have had frustrating moments in their season. So why are we taking this one loss? One. And harping all over it. It doesn't make sense to me, right? It makes 0 sense. But, that's how that goes, right? So next up, we get into a little bit of transfer portal magic, right? So obviously we're going to go over my top teams in the transfer portal. So first we're going to start off with a group of 5 teams, right? I don't think you should be able to rank, the Power 4. I'm going to have to rank separately than the group of 5. The group of 5 teams just can't compete with the Power 4 in terms of NIL and attraction and all that. So we're going to do it separately. We're going to go over the group of 5 first, and then we're going to go over the Power 4, who I think we got honorable mentions, and we're going to do top 5 for the group of 5, and then we'll do top 10 and honorable mentions for the Power 4. So without further ado, let me take some water. And let's get into it. So, our first honorable mention in the group of 5, if I can find it here, we're going to go with North Texas. So, North Texas, they've brought in a lot of great guys, and they've done this throughout the past 2 years in the portal, right? They've, obviously it's a Texas school, and being in Texas as a group of 5 team is a great thing. Well, I mean, the recruits are plentiful in Texas through the portal, through recruiting, high schoolers, and all that. So North Texas is able to bring in a lot of great 3-star guys, even guys like Clayton Johnson here from Tulane, and they always bring in these group of 5 or these FCS transfers that always pan out really well, right? Like Cameron Dorner here, or Jaden Becks. And, they bring in these Sam Houston guys, Miami, Reese Puffenbarger. They have they bring in a lot of really talented guys from really talented conferences, right? You see the Big Ten, the ACC, you see the Big 12 even, yeah, with TCU here. So they're bringing in very talented players, and, they're in the American Conference, and I think, they always do a really good job in the portal. So my honorable mention one is North Texas. The next honorable mention we're going to go with is Charlotte. The Charlotte 49ers, right? So this season, they, in this portal cycle, they got Colin Gill from Georgia. You bring in a couple of Ohio guys. You got Grayson Loftus from Duke, which is a pretty good quarterback, especially at the power or the group of 5 level. They're going to play great, or he's going to play great. So just really great pickups. Dwight Boodle here from Nebraska. You got Connor Harrell from UNC coming in, Jada McGowan from Boston College, who got a lot of playing time this season, Donald Chaney from Louisville, and these are really good transfers. And obviously, I would put them higher on the list, but their outgoing is just insane. They have so many guys leaving, 34 guys leaving, and a lot of them are really good players, right? So other than that, that's why they're in the honorable mention. But they did bring in a lot of great recruits. Charlotte, the past couple of years under Biff Poggi, has been kind of setting up this nice foundation. And obviously Poggi got fired, but they've been setting up this nice foundation. And I think it's gonna pay off next year. Even I could see this team winning 8 games. So that's our last honorable mention for the group of 5. Our next, we're going to go to our number 5 team, which is UConn. So UConn last season, 9-win team, and they retain a lot of their guys. We'll see it down here. Yes, they have 15 outgoing transfers, but they retain a lot of their good guys, especially a guy like Skylar Bell, right? And they retain these good players, and then they bring in more. Ben Smiley, Trent Jones, Juice Vereen from NC State, a great tight end, Kobe Albert, safety from Mississippi State. You have great players coming in, right? You have SEC caliber players, Power 4 caliber players, Caleb Burton III. You got guys like, who am I looking for here? Romello Murphy from Arizona. You have great guys coming in, and it's just building an even better foundation for UConn. So, UConn could even be a 10-win team next season. I mean, they won 9, and they play independent. So, I wouldn't be surprised if this team was really good next year. So, I like UConn a lot. They earn my number 5 spot on the group of 5 transfer list. Next up, our next team is going to be Texas State. So Texas State, under G.J. Kinney, Texas State has been electric. So G.J. Kinney's been the coach, I think, the past 2 years, and he's done a great job with this team. And a lot of it is because of how he hits the portal. He gets a lot of good guys. You get Kamari Terrell, Quincy Brown from Nicholls State. You got Greg Burrell from UNLV. And we keep going down here. Tyron Smith from Cincinnati. I've talked about him on the podcast before. You have a lot of guys who are really skillful, used to play Power 4 football, coming back home to Texas. And, it's going to be interesting to see. And for Texas State, they bring in 3 quarterbacks that look really good. Right? I think Yarnell is the favorite to win this job. I think Yarnell does win the job. But you have Holden Griner from Auburn, a former Benedictine quarterback. And then you have Giovanni McCoy, former starter at Oregon State. So you have 3 really good quarterbacks coming in, and they do such a great job of bringing in talent. You bring in Greg Burrell. Obviously, you lose arguably your best player in Ishmael Mahdi, but I think they're going to do a great job with this class, especially. I mean, it just looks really good for Group of 5 football. Next up, we're going to talk about our, number 3 in our Group of 5 portal rankings is Tulane. So Tulane has got a great class for a Group of 5 team. As you can see, they're bringing in 21 guys, which is really good, and then they're bringing in really skilled guys, right? Maurice Westmoreland, one of the best edges in this transfer portal class. You're bringing in a lot of quarterbacks: Donovan Leary, T.J. Finley, Caden Samanza, and I think there's one more, or Ty Thompson, I guess, decided to stay. But, I mean, there's going to be a great QB competition down in Tulane, right? I think T.J. Finley wins the job, but Caden Samanza is a great candidate to be the backup and future starter, right? But, I mean, you just bring in a lot of good guys. Anthony Brown-Stevens is a great wide receiver from Kentucky. Amari Hayes is a great receiver from FAU. Jimmy Callaway, a great receiver from Louisville. They're really doing a good job. And they're one of the top 3 in terms of Group of 5 football. But the only reason why I can't put them higher is just the losses, right? You lose Mekhi Hughes, Alex Ballman, Clayton Johnston, and Darian Mensah, right? I mean, just kind of like the lifeblood of your team last year, right? You're losing them, but I think they did a great job replacing them, which is arguably more important. And you keep the same coaches with Summerall. Excuse me. So I think this team very deserving of the number 3 spot in my Group of 5 portal rankings. Next up, number 2 is Memphis. So Memphis has always been a really good Group of 5 program, and obviously they've had Seth Hennigan, Trey Sutton, like a lot of really good, lots of really great talent, really, over the past couple of years at running back, wide receiver, quarterback, and obviously Seth Hennigan, if you don't know, is a great quarterback, but he's a senior, he's graduating, he's going to the draft, so you got some holes on your team, right? But I think, Memphis brings in 25 transfers at a time when they kind of really needed it, right? You bring in Cody Jones from Michigan, Sam Brumfield from Virginia Tech, who's a starter, by the way. He's elite. C.J. Smith from Purdue. And the name I really like in this list is Brendan Lewis from Nevada. I think, he's going to fill in that job very well. He's not going to be as good as Seth Hennigan, but he's going to be just as good. He's going to keep Memphis on the map. Won't let him fall into a despair like, you see with a lot of these Group of 5 programs. You got Rashad Amos, who really didn't get much time at Ole Miss, but would see the field here at Memphis. Jaden Thompson from Louisville. You have a lot of guys, right? And they only lose 16 guys. Some of them are pretty good, like Elijah Herring or DJ Bell. But I think this is a great class for Memphis. I think they're doing a very good job. I really like it. So I think they did focus a lot on defense, which is very important for them. So I really like. They have a nice foundation, and yeah, they just did a great job. So our number 1 team in the Group of 5 in terms of the transfer portal is going to be Southern Miss. I mean, Southern Miss, what a turnaround. Complete 180 from last season. So last season they went 1-11 and looked awful. Then they make the best decision, like, probably in their existence, other than like recruiting Brett Favre maybe, is bringing in Charles Huff. So if you don't know, Charles Huff was the head coach at Marshall, won a Sun Belt championship at Marshall. Marshall refused to extend his contract, so he left and he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the worst team in this conference and bring the whole football team with me. So you see it here. Incoming transfers, 36. Some of them, or most of them, are from Marshall. So, and the players at Marshall are really good, right? You have guys like Tyshawn Chapman. You have guys like Braylon Brown, Chuck Montgomery, Elijah Metcalf, the quarterback, Braylon Braxton here. Like, these guys are elite players, very good players in the Group of 5. Like, in my opinion, they're probably the best in the Group of 5, at least some of the best in terms of a team's talent, right? You got like Marshall, Boise State obviously is number 1, but these guys are very close to number 2 or 3 in that position, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Southern Miss goes to the Sun Belt Championship with this team. I mean, they're just completely redoing the talent, and I think they have, obviously, the head coach who already knows all the players. Kind of think of it as a much smaller Dion to Colorado kind of move, right? You're bringing your own luggage, and it's Louis. So that's kind of how I feel about this, except I think he's going to do much better. You have much more experienced players coming from Marshall to Southern Miss. So that's number one. Number one is Southern Miss. I think they have done the best in the portal in terms of group of 5 so far. So let's get into the Power 4. So completely new list for the Power 4, incomparable really in terms of recruiting style or NIL and whatnot. So we're going to keep them separate. So we're just going to go over I got 10 teams for y'all now, or actually technically 12, right? So we're going to go with our first honorable mention, which is Kentucky. Kentucky, they bring in a couple of good guys like True Edwards, Zach Calzada, Dante Dowdle, but they have done a good job. They brought in great people. But the outgoing, there's just so many guys leaving. Like, Brandon White, Anthony Brown, Stevens, Barry Brown, Dane Key. You lose your whole receiving squad pretty much. Like, I think, in my opinion, that's too monumental to put him higher, right? They brought in good guys like True Edwards or Zach Calzada, but they're not. There's already so much wrong with the team. It doesn't, to me, you're just going from 3 wins to 4 wins with this move. But it's enough to earn them an honorable mention just because of the sheer volume of transfers they brought in, and they've done a pretty good job. That's honorable mention number 1. Honorable mention number 2 is Oregon. So Oregon, they have not brought in a lot of guys. Only 9 transfers. Obviously, they have more outgoing. But they brought in really good transfers. They've done such a good job. They have probably my number 1 player in the portal, which is Dylan Tieneman here from Purdue. Just a great safety. Going to be an All-American. Going to be a great NFL player. This guy's playing on Sundays. He is insane. So they got my number 1 player in the portal. They bring in Alex Harkey from Texas State. Great offensive tackle there. I don't like the Bear Alexander move, but Isaiah World, you get these great guys. Jamari Johnson's great. There's only two people I don't like on this list, which is Malik Benson and Bear Alexander. These 2 guys are frauds. They don't know how to support a team. Malik Benson is a JUCO bandit, but Mekhi Hughes, Emmanuel, I don't know how to say his last name, but they address the offensive line. They bring in Jamari Johnson to play tight end. They bring in Mekhi Hughes to play running back. They already have the wide receivers, right? Evan Stewart's coming back. It looks like they're rocking with Dante Moore this season. So I think they did a great job, right? I like what Oregon's brought in, and that's enough for my honorable mention, right? Next, we're gonna be going over Mississippi State. So State really has done a pretty good job, in my opinion, right? Obviously, they were really bad last year, and they're losing a lot of guys, right? They're losing, Kevin Coleman, MVP, their future quarterback, Mario Craver. But, they were a 4-win team, or if that. They weren't good. So it doesn't hurt to lose those guys, in my opinion. The only way you can really go is up. So you bring in Anthony Evans, a great return man. You bring in Aiden Williams from Ole Miss. You bring in Cam Thompson from NIU. You bring in some offensive line help. You bring in Brennan Thompson. And the big moves, in my opinion, the 2 biggest are Luke Kromenhoek, obviously. It's going to be interesting to see if he even starts this year. I doubt it. I think they still rock with Shapen. But Kromenhoek should be, he just needs time, in my opinion. If we give him time, I think he can turn into at least a decent quarterback. But you bring in Jerron Glover from Michigan State. Fluff Bothwell, probably my number 1 running back in the portal, goes to Mississippi State. That's a great pickup. That is a great running back. He's only a freshman, going to be, a sophomore next year. But going to be that's just a fantastic pickup by Mississippi State. One of my favorite moves of the offseason, right? So really just did a good job there. Malik Benson going to be riding the bench all season. Dang straight they are. Or he is, my bad. Next up, we're going to go with FSU. FSU at the 9th spot. So FSU, they honestly did a really good job fixing the offense. You bring in Squirrel White. You bring in Deuce Robinson. You bring in, I forget who I was going to say. Who else was it? You just bring in a lot of offensive players. You address the D-line, the linebackers, the edges. But you bring in Tommy C at quarterback. That's just the one downside I have. That's why they're not higher. Excuse me. It's because I just don't see how, these are great transfers. These are great pickups between Deuce and Squirrel White. And, just great pickups. But you have Tommy C. I don't know if Tommy C can get the ball to those guys. We'll have to see. Hopefully he can for Florida State's sake. But I think this is a great improvement. I mean, really, anywhere is up from last season for them. So hopefully Tommy C can play the best quarterback of his career. And, maybe I'll put him higher. But for now, they're at the 9th spot just because I just think quarterback still holds them back, right? They have these great wide receivers, but they don't have anyone to throw it to them, in my opinion. So that means Florida State is at the 9th spot. Nebraska is next at number 8. So number 8, we're going with Nebraska. So I think Matt Rule did a great job, really. And if anything, I should have these guys higher. But you bring in Elijah Pritchett from Alabama. You bring in Hardly Gilmore. You bring in Naziah Hunter, one of my favorite wide receivers in the portal. You bring in Dane Key. And all of a sudden, you kind of have a really good kind of core around Dylan Raiola. I mean, who's to complain there? And then you bring in these edges like Williams. No, I don't know how to say his last name, but this guy, Dasan McCullough, Justin Rhett, didn't play for Georgia at all, but Marquez Watson Trent's a really good linebacker from Georgia Southern. Jameer Khan, corner from Southern Illinois. They did a really good job in the portal, in my opinion. The only reason why they're not higher is because just so many guys are leaving. And they're not great guys, obviously. A lot of it is bench players, rotational guys, but guys like James Williams and Prince Will Umanlemalayan, you know what I mean. But I think you're only bringing in 15. You lost 27, right? So that's why they're not ranked higher. So number 8 spot for Nebraska. Next up, at number 7, we got, where are they? Oklahoma. So I really like what Oklahoma did this season, and it goes further than the players. Obviously, it's kind of a similar situation to the Marshall Southern Miss. Washington State's offensive coordinator, I forget his name, new offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. So he gets to bring his guys, right? You bring in John Mateer, who is the second best quarterback in the transfer portal. He used to be the first, but John Mateer, great quarterback. I mean, we saw this season. He looks great. Keontez Lewis from Southern Illinois, Marvin Jones Jr. on the edge. Hopefully the scheme at Oklahoma fits him better. And then you bring in, I mean, they just did a really good job, right? Giovanni Gibson from Arkansas Pine Bluff is really good. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team works. I think they will make it work, in my opinion. I think this team could win 6 games. I think this team could go bowling, just like they did this year, and not lose to Navy, right? But way better quarterback play in John Mateer. You got better wide receivers in Josiah Martin and the FCS guys they brought in, like Keontez Lewis and Giovanni Gibson. And you bring in some Kennesaw State punters and kickers, right? Woohoo! No, I'm just kidding. But once again, just like Nebraska, what holds them back is the amount of outgoing transfers. I mean, they basically are changing their whole offense. They lost most of their wide receivers. They lost their starting quarterback. And it's just a complete redo, right? They're flipping it around. So give me the Sooners at number 7, sorry. Our next team, number 6, we're going with Miami. So Miami has done traditionally, since the portal has become a thing, they've done a really good job, and I think they keep that going, right? They bring in the number one quarterback in the transfer portal Carson Beck, and in my opinion, the number one returning quarterback. You can argue with a wall about that. Like, he is the best quarterback coming back from college. He's the best. So you bring in the best quarterback available. You get Alex Bauman at tight end from Tulane. And what I love about this Miami team is they addressed the defense. You bring in Xavier Lucas, Charles Brantley. You bring in Zachariah Poyser, one of my second favorite safety other than Tiedemann. And then Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona, Ethan O'Connor from Washington State. The only move I'm kind of like about is C.J. Daniels. I think wide receiver, obviously you have a lot of guys leaving between Restrepo, Isaiah Horton hit the portal, and you only bring in C.J. Daniels. And honestly, Miami is like a wide receiver factory, so maybe I need to take a more in-depth look at their depth chart at wide receiver. But they lose, Horton, which is a big loss in my opinion. But I think they've overall done a really good job. And they've addressed their biggest need, which was defense. That's what held them back this season, in my opinion. So they did an overall great job. I think they are poised to make another run next year. I think it could happen. So that's why I got Miami at number 6. Number 5. Where are they? Number 5. We're going with Louisville. What? Yes, Louisville. Number 5, baby. So they did a great job addressing defense. They use a lot of group of 5 and FCS players, but these guys are like studs down there. And I think they did a good job filling in those positions. You bring in 21 guys, you lose a couple, but you bring in Miller Moss, who was a top 5 quarterback in the portal. You bring in Miller Moss. You bring in Bobby Golden from Akron, great wide receiver. And you bring in a ton of new defense, and you got TJ McWilliams from Minnesota. But you bring in Caleb Perry from Tennessee. You're just bringing in a ton of defensive players that were much needed. Defensive line, JoJo Evans from FIU. They are addressing the defense just like Miami did, but I think they did it a little bit better than Miami. So, I got to sneeze. Woo! Bless you. Thank you. Anyways, they did a great job addressing positions of need. I think they have enough talent at wide receiver to stay relevant, and they'll continue doing a great job at wide receiver. But they got one of my favorite quarterbacks in Miller Moss, so that's why they're number 5. Number 4, we're going with Auburn. Auburn, they already have a great team in terms foundationally. Obviously quarterback play held them back, but you still have Jarquez Hunter at running back. You got Cam Coleman, Keandre Lambert-Smith looked really good this season. But then you come into this portal and you bring in guys like Eric Singleton, the best wide receiver in this class. You bring in a great quarterback, another top 5 quarterback in my opinion in this portal class, in Jackson Arnold. So you bring in great guys. You bring in Horatio Fields to play wide receiver. Singleton, Fields, and Cam Coleman is a nasty duo. So they just did such a great job, in my opinion. They got rid of a lot of the depth pieces, which is okay, which I think needed to happen. I think there needed to be some sort of cultural shift at Auburn if they want to be good again, and they did just that. And even like Rayon Strader from Miami of Ohio is great. Xavier Chaplin, offensive tackle from Virginia Tech, is really great. Like, you're bringing in really good high-caliber players. Obviously, they don't have as many transfers as some teams, but 16 high-quality transfers, I'll take it any day. They did such a good job. Give me Auburn at number 4. Next up, 3rd place, top 3, the bronze medal goes to LSU. LSU, they brought in a lot of good guys, a lot of really skilled guys. You bring in Patrick Payton. You bring in Jack Pyburn, the edge from Florida, MVB from Mississippi State, Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech, Destin Hill from Florida State. That was an accident. Don't worry about Destin Hill. But Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, Barrion Brown from Kentucky. I mean, they really just kind of reloaded this wide receiver squad, right? This wide receiver squad that was last season, Kyron, why do you have to kill that man, right? Kyron, Savion Brown, I think is his name. Savion Thomas, sorry. and C.J. Daniels, but you're re-upping that with even better talent, in my opinion. You get Barian Brown and Nick Anderson. I mean, these two alone, right? But they have a good amount of outgoing guys. Nothing too crazy, right? So they did a great job filling positions they've lost. They bring in the edges, they bring in the receivers, they bring in the tight ends, the corners. I really like it. You get a QB for the future in Michael Van Buren. I think they did an absolutely fantastic job in the portal. So that is enough for bronze on my podium. Next, number 2, who's it going to be? It's Ole Miss. Ole Miss is in second place. Silver medal. So Ole Miss has done a stellar job in the portal. I mean, they've done it ever since the portal existed. They've done a stellar job. You bring in Harrison Wallace, Traylon Ray from West Virginia, Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest, Dejon Stribling, one of my favorite wide receivers in the portal, Caleb Odom, former 5-star, Luke Kaz, a great tight end to replace Caden Prescorn. You bring in Prince Will Uman Malayan, and they just did a great job, in my opinion, in the portal. They didn't even lose anyone too crazy either, which is even more impressive for them. So I don't know how Lane Kiffin does it every year, but he does it. There's so many good wide receivers on this football team. Austin Simmons is going to have whoever he wants to throw at. But there's just obviously some pickups that just don't make much sense to me, like Jordan Simmons, for instance, Pierce Clarkson, Jaden Yates. Jaden Yates is pretty good, actually. Sorry. Like P.J. Wilkins. Like, some of these guys are a little questionable, but they've done such a good job. And they bring in, like, 3 of the top 25 receivers in the portal. They just did a fantastic job. So I got to give it to them. They're number 2. But number 1, in my opinion, is Texas Tech. Texas Tech has done a fantastic job. I mean, this is really just, like, beautiful. And, they bring in 17 guys, but, the average guy is going to scroll through here and be like, Terrence Carter, who is this guy? Reggie Virgil, Hunter Zambrano, who are these guys? These guys are elite. These guys are great players, right? And Texas Tech already has a great foundation at quarterback, at wide receiver. They already have a great room. But then they bring in Reggie Virgil, who's a great wide receiver for Miami of Ohio. You bring in Bryce Pollock from Mississippi State. You bring in, the best FCS player in Hunter Zambrano. You bring in Amir Boyd Matthews, a great corner at UTEP. Dante Balfour, a great corner at Charlotte. You're bringing in all these, like, hidden gems almost, and it's going to be beautiful. They're going to look so good next year. I can already see it. Romello Height's a great edge rusher, but they're not even losing anyone crazy either, right? They are just re-upping on talent, and they did a very good job at it. So I think that Texas Tech deserves that number 1 spot for me. So that is my number 1 team in the portal, Texas Tech. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and switch gears here. So, that was the majority of today's episode. Obviously, we have real spiel. Sorry. If you're in chat, ask me some questions. I'm going to go over just some little things from throughout the week. That's what I think that's more of what I should do with Real Spiel is you guys ask questions. I'll bring up some topics throughout the week that I've been seeing, give my 2 cents about it and whatnot. So for a couple minutes. So yeah, Jets hired Aaron Glenn to be their new head coach. I like the pickup. The Jets are already a very defensive-oriented team. Why not get a defensive-oriented head coach to coach that great defense? I mean, it's really a match made in heaven. You got Sauce. You got Quincy Williams. Just great defense. And then in my mock draft, I had them taking the Mason Graham. So I think, that's another great pickup. I think it makes sense. So yeah, Jets hired Aaron Glenn, and the Bears ended up getting Ben Johnson. It's pretty interesting because they're saying that Hendon Hooker has to go with Ben Johnson, but obviously Caleb Williams is starting at Caleb Williams is going to be the job. So I don't think Hendon's going to go with him to the Bears, but a great hire in my opinion. The Bears needed a better offense and they get it. So thank goodness there. Ryan says thoughts on Jeff Ulbrich and the UGA portal class. So the Falcons fired Richie Lake, something like that. Their former defensive coordinator. Defense for the Falcons was pretty abysmal last year. Other than AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates, stuff was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie, but I think Ulbrich is a good hire. Obviously, he was fired for a reason, but he was the interim. I think he was the interim head coach for the Jets, but he did a really good job. He did coach the Falcons before, but he left the Falcons, went to the Jets, and then honestly made a really good defense for the Jets. And, I do think he could do a good job for Atlanta. Ulbrich in 2020 did have one of the better defensive seasons for Atlanta, if you look at it in the past 5 years. And it's not like he has a bad roster like he did then. We have AJ Terrell, we have Jesse Bates. We can re-sign Justin Simmons if we want. I mean, Grady Jarrett. I don't think we should bring back Judon, but we have Arnold Ebiketie, who in my opinion is poised for a breakout. You have great linebacking core and Landman and what's his name if he could stay healthy. Forgetting his name. Troy Anderson? Is Troy Anderson? I think so. But he can, there's much better tools, and then especially with our pick in the draft, with the potential to get a really good edge like Michael or James Pierce or Mike Green, I think really it's a step in the right direction. I think people are overreacting. I think we'll be fine. I think it's definitely the right move. And you look at it, who's available. It's not we have these endless options to choose from. The options were limited, but I think we made the best decisions with our options available. And then the UGA portal class. So the UGA portal class, in my opinion, it was kind of they did address the needs, which is a wide receiver position. They did address it, and they addressed the needs at safety. But, I mean, the losses, right? You look at the losses. Let's pull up Georgia here. Let me pull it up. Sorry. But we only bring in 6 guys, and we lose 14, right? We lose Carson Beck. We lose Damon Wilson. Some of those guys obviously aren't big, but losing a Sam Pemba, losing a Jamal Jarrett, losing a Julian Humphrey, that does hurt a team. And I think we lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 great pieces, and we only replace it with 6 more guys. But I do like the pickups, right? You bring in Noah Thomas, 8 touchdowns for Texas A&M last year, 6'6" wide receiver, going to play that Colby Young role next season. You got Zachariah Branch, who could be the speedster that we've been lacking. And then you bring in his twin brother, Zion Branch, who's also going to be really good for us at safety, in my opinion. So you bring in pretty good guys, but, you bring in 3 heavy hitters, in my opinion. And the rest, it's kind of eh. Jaden Harris is kind of eh. Adrian Maddox has promise. But Micah Bell and Jaden Harris, you're really only bringing in 5 guys, right? Or 4 guys, sorry, that are going to be meaningful, in my opinion. So in my opinion, in terms of portal ranking, it's they didn't do a good job in terms of portal ranking. But as a Georgia fan, you shouldn't be upset because they're addressing the needs. We have a stellar high school class that I think, the past, obviously we have the past 2 years high school classes that were great, and those guys are going to fill those positions great. I think there's really not much to worry about. And I think it was a pretty decent class. It just wasn't as heavy hitting as, the the Texas Techs or the Ole Miss or even the like Mississippi States. Like it just wasn't that caliber at all. So, but I do think they addressed needs very well. So I think that's all. That's all, folks. I'm just kidding. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in once again. I appreciate y'all for coming in. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I will catch y'all later.